This video is sponsored by Launch Tabletop, a board game manufacturer where you can produce your own professional quality game without breaking the bank via their print-on-demand service Launch Lab. Marcus Adams is a viewer of the channel and he contacted me to let me know he had used Launch Lab and he was delighted with the results. Marcus said, "The service was great and they helped me when I had problems. I particularly like the fact they reviewed the files before they were used for production and were able to advise me to improve some of them due to resolution and alignment issues which I had missed." Marcus intends to launch his football deck building game Pitch Battles on Kickstarter later this year. Launch Lab ships worldwide, so if you'd like to make your own game, visit launchtabletop.com and use the discount code AdamInWales for a 20% discount. And back to the video. Explore cities and beautiful vistas, chart surrounding seas, and look to the stars to track comets, constellations, and planets. A mashup of worker placement, dice placement, and tableau building in the first title of a new trilogy from a publisher at the top of their game. Wayfarers of the South Tigris follows in the footsteps of the hugely popular North Sea and West Kingdom trilogies. Another Euro game from Phillips, McDonald and Dimitrievski. And that's the hook. I'm Adam Porter. I design games and I review them on this channel with a focus on product design. If you like what I do, please subscribe, comment and share the video. Wayfarers of the South Tigris is a 2022 release from superstar designers riding high after a run of big successes. Phillips already had a number of titles under his belt, but it was 2016's Raiders of the North Sea which really raised his profile. Shipwrights and Explorers completed the first Garfield trilogy, but Architects of the West Kingdom was the first collaboration between Phillips and his now frequent co-designer Sam McDonald, and arguably it was this title which really cemented the pair as leading designers. The sort of pairing which instills trust in adoring fans. Any product put out from Phillips and McDonald immediately garners attention, and there are hordes of gamers out there who will buy this game sight unseen. Myself? Well, I'm a dabbler. I enjoy Raiders and Architects, perhaps the most renowned titles, but I haven't ventured into the others in the series. I know little of Shipwrights, Explorers, Paladins or Viscounts, so I entered into Wayfarers of the South Tigris with little expectation or anticipation. I was ready to trust Garfield and dive right in. In Wayfarers, players represent explorers, cartographers and astronomers in Baghdad. The goal is to have the most victory points from sets of matching icons, sets of differing icons and other set collection bonuses at game end. On your turn, you can place a worker on one of the action spaces on the board. The actions might gain you cards for your tableau, or resources, tokens, and other rewards. The worker remains on the card located next to the action, and if a player collects that card on a future turn, they'll gain the worker along with it. Workers come in 3 different colours, which don't relate to player colours, and locations can only be activated by specific coloured workers. Alternatively, a player may place a die on one of their own dice placement spots, again receiving rewards for doing so. Any die can be placed onto a blank space, but if the space has an icon, you can only place a die there if a column in your caravan corresponding to the number showing on the die has an icon matching the one on the space. When you cover one of these spaces with a token, you immediately gain the reward beneath the new token, and from here on, you're considered to have the icon from the token for the rest of the game. In this way, the dice work like workers, which amass icons on each surface to increase the number of different locations they can visit throughout the game. Dice can also be manipulated by using reroll actions, as well as +1 or -1 actions, which can be built into your caravan display. In this game, you can only ever place dice on your own cards, never on another player's tableau or on the central card display. A third option on your turn is to collect and re-roll all of your dice. This rest action also activates some of the cards in your tableau. Cards to the left of your player board represent lands explored, offering up additional dice placement spots or ongoing effects, and cards to the right represent seas, which offer more dice placement spots and single-use powers. And cards above the board represent planets, stars and comets, which count for endgame scoring. Additionally, you can purchase townsfolk cards, which are tucked under the other cards to power up the associated actions, or inspiration cards, which double the scoring opportunities from space cards. Players navigate across a journal track, gaining rewards as they go. But each time you move, there's a requirement that you have certain icons in your personal display. When one player reaches the end of the track, scores are totaled and the highest scorer wins. As always, we'll start with onboarding. A player's first impression of a game is usually based on a quick scan of the box. And Wayfarers has a serviceable cover. The image is attractive, but it's pretty simple with our avatar, the astronomer, hidden away in the top right corner. Frankly, this cover does little to sell the game, and it fails to capitalise on the outstanding character illustrations of Dimitrievski, so prominent in the West Kingdom games. It must be challenging for Garphill Games after 7 previous titles with the same graphic stylings, not to mention the many expansions. They must be running out of ways to utilise Dimitrievski's skills without the box covers becoming repetitive. The upcoming inventors and scholars of the South Tigris do little to distinguish themselves by cover art alone. Perhaps this is a canny move, because one thing that Wayfarers is not is a game for newcomers. This is a game for Garphill aficionados and committed, experienced gamers, particularly those who lean towards the strategic, complex, point salad Euro corner of the hobby. Onboarding describes the process of taking a fresh consumer and transitioning them into a committed user of your product. In board game terms, that generally means communicating the rule set as painlessly as possible and getting people playing. Now I'll preempt my analysis of the game by giving a little context of my own taste and experience. I like simple mechanisms, I design simple products, and I have shelves full of simple games. Wayfarers is something of a departure for me. But among the many gateway and family titles on my shelves, there sits a copy of Dominant Species, a copy of Arc Nova, several big box Rosenbergs and a fair few economic heavyweights. That is to say, I lean light, but I've been playing games long enough to experience a great many heavier titles. And despite all of that, Wayfarers was a significant challenge to learn. I worked through the rulebook, I watched a rules overview on YouTube, dipped into a playthrough by the designers, and it took a couple of hours of preparation before I felt able to introduce the game to other people. And then of course, there's the teach. This is not an intuitive rule set at all. There's a little bit of everything thrown in here. Icons and exceptions everywhere. So many options on each and every turn. This is a game to learn as you play. For the first time ever, I was actually relieved when a player said, well, shall we just start playing and I'll learn it as I go? Normally, that would result in a distinctly unimpressed hard stare from me, the full Paddington. But in this instance, it really feels like that's the only way. The game has a sandbox feel about it. You can really dabble in a little bit of whatever you want. Explore cities or oceans or focus on the night sky. Build up your caravan or gather townsfolk or focus your efforts on moving across that central journal track. You only need to learn about a section when you want to use it. Of course, this results in a long and sometimes frustrating, meandering first play where nobody's really sure what they're doing or what they're aiming for. But unless every player is going to commit to a lengthy, multimedia learning experience, that's the way it has to be. If ever there was a game which needed a Rodney Smith rules overview. And to compound matters, the rulebook isn't easy to reference either. Icons are listed on the back cover, but there's no detail about how the actions work, so you frequently end up flicking through the pages looking for a single sentence of text that you're sure you read somewhere. The decision to make the game entirely icon-based, with no text in the game components, is probably essential, particularly to stay in line with earlier titles. But it makes it significantly harder to understand the specific workings of certain actions and abilities. The genius of Garphill Games is that they have slowly and methodically built a following of committed fans. They've built trust and goodwill over a number of years, and those fans are not going to be perturbed by an arduous rules explanation. What you really want to know though is whether the game's any good, right? If it's fun, well, surely it's worth the effort. Well, as always, I'm going to analyse the game using my ladder engagement system. A game is scored between 0 and 3 points in 5 different categories, and each point scored climbs the game 1 rung up the ladder, and a score of 10 or above indicates a real favourite with me. Thematic immersion in Wayfarers is weak. None of the in-game actions are explained thematically or justified in any real fashion. You never feel like an explorer, adventurer, or astronomer. The tableau of cards which grows in front of you is very attractive though, so on that basis alone, I'm scoring the game a 1. Interaction between players is pretty superficial. There's a minor struggle for majorities occupying the various guilds and scoring for comets, but it's pretty low on the list of priorities with everything else that's going on. From time to time, other players are likely to snatch a card that you wanted before you can get to it, but there are so many other options on the table you'll barely notice. The incorporation of a system where players can mark influence on a specific card, hence forcing other players to pay coins or provisions when they want to utilise it, feels like an afterthought, and it adds little to the game except for a little bit more busy work. And if there's one thing this game could have done without, it's more busy work. For stress and challenge, it's a 3. The game is tough. Despite the many available options on any given turn, the one that you really want always seems to be just out of reach. Set collection is a massive part of the game, so you're often looking for a specific icon to add to your display, and the cost is always 1 coin more than you have available, and your die is always showing a result 1 pip higher than the one you needed in order to use it. The game is filled with tension, and with the massive number of options to consider, you can expect a bit of downtime between turns as players figure out their best move. For feedback, it's a 3. The game is hugely generous with its rewards on every turn. You're gathering silver and provisions, land cards, sea cards, space cards, and then tucking downsfolk and inspiration cards beneath. Each card offers up new abilities, upgrades, and dice placement spots, and tokens placed on the caravan make your dice more and more powerful throughout the game. This is certainly a game where you interact far more with the game processes and systems than you do with the other players. I haven't played the included solo mode, but I can only imagine it would be a very rewarding experience if you had the time to invest in it. Finally, Wayfarers is packed full of meaningful choices, for many people the most important aspect of a decent game. Chance does play a role in determining your success. Dice rolls don't always go your way, and the exact icon you need to complete a set sometimes lurks at the bottom of one of those decks of cards for longer than you'd hope. But the skill in the game is diversifying and mitigating against these unlucky moments, and certainly the most skillful player is going to prevail. 11 points is impressive, but there are deductions to be made. I deduct points for unintuitive systems, unhelpful rulebooks, and fiddly components and presentation. Wayfarers falls foul of all of these, and it loses 3 points as a result. The overall score of 8 is not a disaster. In fact, it's very good, but I'm not sure Wayfarers is for me. I find the game in equal parts frustrating and fascinating. I wonder if playing Paladins and Viscounts of the West Kingdom would have prepared me a little more for the complexity here. Coming off the back of Architects and Raiders, this was a significant step up. Moving on to my product design checklist. Is the game innovative? Well, combining many different Eurogame mechanisms into one behemoth is always going to generate a unique experience, so no 2 complex Eurogames are ever going to feel the same. That said, there was no ingenious new mechanism at play here that really caught my attention, no core mechanical hook. The headline innovation, I suppose, is the caravan system of assigning icons to specific die results which dictate the ways in which they can be placed. But frankly, it's a pretty weak hook. It's hard to explain, it's hard to read, and it's frustrating in the barriers that it presents to players. The game lacks the charming hook of Raiders of the North Sea, place a worker, bring one home, or that of Architects of the West Kingdom, accumulate workers to gain greater rewards, or gather up your opponent's accumulated workers and throw them in prison to gain rewards. So is there a need for this product? Well, in the grand scheme of things, no. There are many complex strategic Eurogames out there. They're lengthy affairs and they reward repeated plays. A handful of such titles is enough to keep any gamer going for a significant period, and there were already 6 titles in this series alone. However, I recognise the irony of saying that with a wall of unnecessary products behind me, and Wayfarers is as worthy a product as the next heavy Euro. That said, Garphill have carefully cultivated a collector mentality among their fan base, and those fans are ravenous for more. I don't mean to belittle their desires. If you're inclined to fill your shelves with Garphill products, if it brings you joy, more power to you. After enjoying Raiders and Architects very much and possessing the hoarding gene myself, I was very tempted to start accumulating other Garfield products, maybe Viscounts or Paladins next. I wouldn't know which one to choose, and the upcoming Shipwrights revamp looks really good. But Wayfarers is a very different beast to the earlier titles that I've played, and I'm not sure I'm ready to jump into another Garfield game if they're all of this level of complexity. Is there room for this product to grow with its user? Well, most definitely. This game has tons to explore. I mean tons. So many different strategies and combos. If there was never a single expansion, you'd be set for years. And there will be expansions, you can be sure of that. There are a massive number of sections and systems to bolt new mechanisms onto. Finally, as always, I'm going to plot the game in my idea execution matrix. An exceptional commercial product has a fantastic central concept married with outstanding execution by designer and publisher alike. These games occupy the yellow-red section of the grid. Now, I'm not sure what the core concept of Wayfarers actually is. I like to introduce these videos with a pithy phrase to illustrate the hook of the game. With Wayfarers, that was actually pretty tough. The caravan system is too convoluted to act as a hook, and combining dice workers with regular workers is unintuitive. The landscape building is pretty, but we've seen that before, though the astronomy aspect did feel fresh. I think the idea is mediocre. Execution is hard to put a figure on. The mechanisms are interwoven very cleverly. The game feels balanced and fair with significant depth. But it's also overwrought and unintuitive. It feels like it needed pruning, and the use of a vast collection of icons needed to be handled with greater care and a clearer reference sheet and player aids. That would have made all the difference. But overwhelmingly, I have to applaud Garfield Games for their execution of the product line as a whole. They have made this beast of a game because they can. Because they've proven their ability, their acumen, their mastery of the craft of Eurogame design. For a newcomer to the hobby, and without a proven track record, Wayfarers would linger in the blue-green section of the grid. I don't think it would find any traction, and many players wouldn't get past the rules. But that's not who's buying this stuff. Wayfarers is squarely aimed at fans of previous games in the series, and on that basis, it has to be considered another hit for Phillips, McDonald and artist Dimitrievski. If you'd like to learn more about the worker placement family of games with many excellent examples of games to try out, including Architects of the West Kingdom and Raiders of the North Sea, follow the link. And I'll see you next time. All the best.